The COVID-19 pandemic has placed a myriad of challenges for our federal government as well as for our provincial and municipal governments. Joining us today to talk about this is Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman. Welcome back to our set, Mayor Spearman. It's so great to have you here today.
I'm looking forward to having the chat, Jeanette.
All right, so the Premier has announced plans to reopen the economy beginning May 14th or even sooner, actually, which is great news for local businesses. But in the meantime, the Lethbridge Economic Recovery Task Force has asked the city to quickly take action to help local businesses survive the economic downturn. So one of the suggestions is that the city provide some grants to help with rent. Another question was, can funds designated for recreation be repurposed for grants?
Yeah. So those are interesting questions. What we're going to look at, first of all, is deferrals. And of course, utility deferrals are possible. So we'll see how that goes. And then the other piece of it is tax deferrals, interest-free, basically, longer periods to pay, allow people to get back on their feet financially. So those are the first measures we're looking at. We'll see what else there might be once we have a clearer picture of what the COVID-19 situation has cost the city and where we are financially.
Okay, so time will tell.
Yeah, we will have some discussions, and councillors will be asking questions from administration to get information needed to make decisions.
Okay, great. This pandemic has had some positive effects in that it's brought out kindness and care from lots of residents, as we've seen, who are looking out for one another. And I'm sure that's wonderful to see as a mayor.
It's nice to see that, and great to see the community coming together. People putting out positive messages, people volunteering to deliver food to people who can't leave their homes, people assisting others. It's been tremendous. The programs that have come forward to help families who struggle with food from the food bank, or those kids who are receiving meals at schools, seeing 750 meals being delivered to families, lunches for a week, the same way kids would have got them at school if they had been there. Tremendous to see that kindness and the volunteerism that supports it.
Yeah, nothing like hard times to see sometimes the best come out in people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, our sister city in China has donated a shipment of surgical masks, right, for frontline workers in Lethbridge. Can you tell us a bit more about our relationship with our sister city, Anyang City? Besides the friendship, maybe are there economic ties as well?
Well, we were hoping to build on those. Our relationship has lasted about 30 years. I think Mayor David Carpenter was the first mayor to visit Anyang. And when they've had visitors, we've accommodated them here in Lethbridge. Mayor Tarlick went to China as well, and I was there in 2017. I led a 25-member group, which included business people, and looking to build ties with businesses in China. We've always been trying to expand our beef exports to China, so we're hopeful to have that. Anyang is a very interesting city. It's a city of about 5 million, and they're our sister city, and we're about 100,000. So when it was on the Chinese news network, being interviewed on Chinese national television, and they asked why I was there, I said, well, we were here to visit our sister city, Anyang. And they said, oh, yeah, that makes sense. You're a small city in Canada, and they're a small city in China.
Wow. So putting it into perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's funny.
But Anyang is the home of the Chinese alphabet. So it started back in the Anyang area about 5,000 years ago, and it's amazing that we have that tie with such a significant city.
Mm-hmm. And it's great that they were able to come through for us too.
So hopefully when relations improve between China and Canada, we will be able to build economically between Lethbridge and Anyang.
Mm-hmm. Now, with some restrictions being lifted soon, do you know yet at what point Lethbridge Transit will be getting back to your regular schedule?
To be announced. And of course, when we become more normalized and people are going back to work and that type of thing, there are people who rely on transit. We'll know as the numbers increase if the transit by request program gets overwhelmed, then we know that it's time to resume more regular routes.
Yeah, interesting. What about playgrounds? Is there any word yet on when kids can get out there and play?
And that's a really challenging question. Kids want to have fun. We've invested lots of money in playground equipment all around the city. We'd like kids to use the facilities, but of course, while there's a risk of contamination, that can't happen. The biggest risk we have going forward is anybody getting and then subsequently spreading the virus. So we still have to maintain our physical distancing, our social distancing. We still have to continue to wash our hands, and we have to make sure that people aren't repeatedly touching equipment or tools or anything over and over again. People have to continue to protect themselves to make sure there isn't a second wave.
I've seen the signs, the outdoors are now open, but maybe time will tell for playgrounds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Still got to be careful there. Now, the recent Community Issues Committee meeting had an interesting discussion around the possibility of switching Access-a-Ride transit to an on-demand system as opposed to a reservation system. Can you maybe explain how that might make things more efficient and more cost-effective?
Yeah, we're very concerned about the cost of Access-a-Ride. It's about twice what other communities our size are paying for Access-a-Ride, and we're looking for efficiencies there. So an on-demand system might be more cost-effective. We also will look at the qualification systems. We provide regular buses with equipment for those people who have physical challenges. And we wondered, can some people use the regular buses more frequently? So Access-a-Ride isn't intended to be a taxi service. It's intended to be an alternative transit service for people who require it. And we'll be looking at all options when it comes to possible efficiencies with Access-a-Ride, so we can maintain the service going forward.
Okay, now another suggestion was made to possibly privatize transit. Do you think that could get some traction down the road with City Council?
That'll require further investigation. Privatizing transit is a big step. We have a big investment in buses and facilities, and we want to make sure that service levels are maintained, and transit's very important to the city of Lethbridge and people who use it.
Absolutely. Now, a report on the city's 2019 finances shows that there was a surplus of $4 million in net financial assets. But now we're sitting at a debt of $33 million. Can you explain where the debt is from and what the plan is to deal with that?
Okay, so what that is it's the cost of financing for the new ATB Leisure Centre. So what we did was we took out additional debenture debt to pay for the facility, and we knew that we would have to pay that off over 20 years when the facility was completed. So that was the big issue that affected us in 2019. We've got a wonderful asset in terms of bricks and mortar, but of course the debt that's associated with that has to be repaid. And it's a challenge, and many people don't associate that debt with physical assets, but we really have to be careful about taking on additional debt going forward and make sure that we can continue to manage the debt payments and they don't become a larger and larger piece of our regular annual expenditures.
Can you tell us a bit about the city's capital stimulus package and the potential for job creation with this?
What we want to do is emphasize shovel-ready projects. We want to be ready for the provincial stimulus funding and make sure that the city of Lethbridge gets its fair share. So we want to make sure that projects going forward are ones that we can action right away and provide benefits to our local economy and employ local people.
Now, do we have a ballpark figure yet as to how much debt the city has incurred from dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic?
It's too early to say at this time. We have applied for and received a line of credit of about $60 million. It's been an increase in the line of credit from $10 million to $60 million to cover off any shortfalls in cash flow. If people are unable to pay their taxes and unable to pay their utilities for several months, then the city is going to take a financial hit. Many of our expenses continue, expenses for our fire services, for our police services, for all the other services. So while those expenses continue, we will be challenged in terms of our shortage of revenue.
Now, Mayor Spearman, do you have any final thoughts for residents as we gradually move forward with
Well, I
lifting
think-
these restrictions?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to continue to stay safe and continue to take precautions. You have to remember the Spanish flu more than 100 years ago, the second wave was more deadly than the first wave. We want to make sure that we maintain a safe community. I'd like to thank everyone for their cooperation to date. It's been impressive how little the pandemic has affected Lethbridge. 13 cases, 10 are recovered. We've done very, very well, and that's because of the collective efforts. But folks, we have to keep it up. We have to take a lot of precautions, and we have to make sure that our city remains safe for all who live here.
Is there any worry now with what's happening in Brooks that any of that could spill over into Lethbridge?
Well, I hope not. It's specific to one employer, and we believe that our employers are taking the right precautions here in Lethbridge, so we don't think we have the same risk, but we'll continue to see what the testing looks like as we go forward. So there's going to be more testing, and hopefully we continue to be a city that is relatively unaffected by the pandemic.
Well, we really appreciate you stopping by here, Mayor Chris Spearman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, and be safe, everyone.